Hello, today I'm going to talk about how cultural exchange between East Asia and the world has created new hybrid cultures, but also led to misunderstanding and unequal power dynamics. My thesis is that cultural exchange between East Asia and the world has developed influential hybrid forms in art, film, and identity, but it has brought stereotypes, power imbalances, and misunderstandings. Here is an overview of my main arguments that I will be talking about in today's presentation. First, we have Orientalism with Madame Butterfly, then internal cultural identity, then cross-cultural artistic influence, and modern media. First with Madame Butterfly. So this was written by John Luther Long, and this text shows how Western writers often portray Japan through an exotic and romantic fantasy. In chapter 1, Butterfly is described as obedient, innocent, and childlike. She becomes a symbol of the ideal Asian woman imagined by the West. Meanwhile, Pinkerton represents Western power, freedom, and dominance. This imbalanced relationship reflects a larger issue. Early cultural exchange was shaped by unequal power. Images of Asia were often simplified, feminized, and exoticized rather than realistic. So in this poster, you can see butterfly shown in a perfect kimono, and this visual reinforces the stereotype of Asian women as passive and submissive, which shaped Western imagination for decades. Next, Muso's story, cultural identity. So, to contrast with Western created images, Muso's story gives us a Japanese person describing his own society and identity. The author does not portray Japan as peaceful or delicate like the West does. Instead, he shows everyday struggle like debt, fight, scams, and running away from trouble and challenges. The tone is more humorous, chaotic, and very human. And this self-representation completely breaks the idealized Japanese fantasy that we saw in Madame Butterfly. It reminds us that cultural exchange becomes distorted when only one side controls the narrative. And especially in Hollywood, those movies and readings were more popular because Hollywood was really big, so that side of the story was mostly shown, but this gives a completely different perspective, and it's from someone who's actually Japanese. And so, as you can see in this image, he looks busy, strong, and nothing like peaceful or quiet like it's been imagined by Western writers. And it kind of shows the gap between fantasy and reality. Next, Van Gogh and Japanism. So, cultural exchange isn't just about misunderstanding. It can also inspire creativity. So Van Gogh was deeply influenced by Japanese woodblock prints, and according to Janet Walker's article, he collected these prints and studied their style closely. And you can see how he copied kind of their like flat colors, bold outlines, and cropped compositions. At the same time, he added imagined elements like frogs and cranes to his painting, which shows how Western artists sometimes create like their own version of Japan instead of the real one. But nevertheless, this is an example of cultural hybridization. So it's creative blending, but it is selective interpretation because it's made by a Western artist and how he views Japan. So now we have Fist of Fury, which was released in 1972, and resistance, masculinity, and anti-imperialism. So Bruce Lee was the face of this movie, and he portrays an Asian man who is powerful, confident, and physically dominant, and which is very different from the stereotypes of Asian men, which are usually weak or submissive. And the film also deals with colonial tension, and since the story focuses on resisting foreign oppression. So Bruce Lee's global popularity showed that East Asian identity could be strong and heroic and not just exotic and like fantasy like. And in this pose, Bruce Lee's body language shows intensity and strength, and his expression is defiant. And this directly challenges Western stereotypes and gives a new image of Asian masculinity. Next, and we're going to compare these two in a minute, but we have Rush Hour that was released in 1998, starring Jackie Chan, and comedy, stereotypes, and Western framing. So Chan became a global star, but Hollywood still framed him in certain stereotypes because his character is skilled and heroic, but his English skills are kind of turned into a joke. So comedy often comes from him being like the foreign outsider and nobody can understand him. And this shows that even when Asian actors gain success, worldwide success, especially in Hollywood, Western media still influences how they can be represented. So it shows the limits of how far will Western culture accept the true identity of East Asia and how people really are instead of the fantasy that was created decades ago. So now to compare Fist of Fury versus Rush Hour. So what changed and what stayed the same? So they both show progress and limitation because in Fist of Fury, Asian identity is self-controlled, strong, and resistant, and shows true masculinity. But in Rush Hour, Asian actors are included in global media, but within a comedic frame. So they gain visibility, but they lost their own cultural autonomy because they had to fit in a stereotypical box and frame, just like how the West imagined them and thought of them, like we talked about previously. And this comparison shows that cultural exchange isn't just simple. Some stereotypes can disappear, but others remain. And I feel as if even when stereotypes shift, they don't completely disappear, and some are still deep-rooted in the industry, and that can be very harmful because people can say, well, they get more representation in the media, but at the same time, they're still used for comedic relief, using racist stereotypes and discrimination, when in reality, they're a lot more masculine and powerful. So this kind of just shows Western's representation versus East Asian representation. So now for the benefits and challenges of cultural exchange. So to summarize, the benefits include new hybrid art forms, as we saw with Van Gogh, global connections, and new cultural icons, so Asian actors gaining visibility, and overall just more interest in East Asian culture, and a lot of inspiration is drawn from East Asian culture. But then we also have some challenges, which is stereotyping and misinterpretation, just like we saw with the movie Rush Hour. Jackie Chan was perceived as not as smart and not good at English and things like that. There's still some exoticism. There's power imbalance in media industries, as we saw with Madame Butterfly, where the women were seen as weak and exotic and submissive. And then also cultural meanings are changed or exploited. And together, these examples show that cultural hybridization can be creative and productive, but also it can be complex and sometimes a little bit problematic. So to conclude, cultural exchange has shaped how East Asia and the world understand each other. From exotic fantasies to hybrid art in Van Gogh and changing film representation with Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, we can see that cultural influence is never one-sided. It is full of creativity, tension, and transformation. This is why cultural hybridization is both significant and challenging. Thank you so much.